up, everybody? Brother Nathan here with episode 7 of the Kingdom Project. And a couple of different things this time. We got a different location, different co-host. Same Fernando, obviously. And co-host today, we are missing Brother Braxton. He'll be back in October, November. So until then, we'll be having different guests and different co-hosts. And today, we have Brother William Hutson. Great to have you, sir.
It's good to be here today.
Hey, great to have you. So, Brother William, tell us a little bit about yourself here, your role here.
I am the Connect pastor here at the River, which is kind of a made-up position. I do a random bunch of things. Was youth pastor for 6.5 years. My hair started turning gray, so I retired.
Makes sense.
And so then I started evangelizing some, and I do things here. Like I said, a bunch of random things. If I start listing stuff, I'll forget something.
Right, content creator, not necessarily for social media, but for series.
Work with ministers, help with music, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some other random things.
Oh, I'm sure. Jack of all trades up in here. Yeah. Master of most.
Apparently, I found out Wednesday I'm a great camera operator.
Hey.
Just found
never left a screen. You're a good camera operator if the guy never leaves a screen.
It was the easiest thing ever because you didn't move the whole time.
I move forward and backwards.
I literally never touched the camera once you started, so it was great.
You know, the Lord gives you some notes, and then you just kind of I stick as close to those notes. Obviously, you give him time to move about. You know, let the Spirit come on you, and He gives you some things. But I try not to get too far away because I don't have ADHD. I don't think I have ADD, nothing like that. But you walk away from those notes, you start getting a little too comfortable, and you will chase a rabbit in a hurry.
You can say some stuff.
So I tried to stay as close. I tried to stay as close to those notes as possible. So I just move up and back because I got pretty good eyesight, so I can see it pretty much 3 steps away, and I try not to move after that.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah, you fill a bunch of roles here, and well, obviously, since this is geared towards students, I want to talk a little bit about your time as a student pastor and get some advice and some nuggets that we can get from you there. But if you would like, run us through a little bit. I mean, I know you got a lot of ministry, but run us through a little bit of your ministry, the start of it, and how it began and where it went.
Okay, so I was a student here, about 11 years old. Troy Carney was my first youth pastor, I believe. And then Brother Payne was my second youth pastor. And when I was 18, graduated high school. 2 weeks later, I went to First Pentecost Church of Independence to be a youth pastor. I graduated high school on Tuesday, came here this Sunday. The next Sunday, I was youth pastor. And it was a journey. I was youth pastor of one person who was a year younger than me, didn't really need a youth pastor. And so I was there 6.5 years. I was youth pastor, music director, drove the van. I preached every Wednesday night basically I was getting my lights for half a year. Wow. I was in college full time, taking hours, working 30 hours a week. I was stressed beyond belief. And at some point, my sister was over children's church. She left when she got married, so then we took over children's church on top of all that stuff. Any kind of community event, we was big part of making it happen. And so 6.5 years of that, I grew a ton. I am who I am today because I did that.
Yeah.
Because it put me in a place where I didn't have a choice but to trust God and figure things out. And I look back at some of the things we did. There was one time we made this background it was a bunch of metal and had a whole bunch of lights behind it, but we was too poor to afford any kind of real light. So it was all like colored spotlights.
Yeah.
And it was like 20 of them behind this metal thing. And when I went back after church to turn it all off, like you touched the wall, you couldn't even touch the wall, it was so hot. Like there was so many things that we should have got in a lot of trouble for.
That the fire marshal would have been like, no.
The van that I drove didn't halfway work. It got busted out one time by a kid. This kid I loved him to death, loved their family, and he got upset because he got in trouble the week before. And we told him he couldn't come back for a couple weeks, picked the rest of his family up. Right as we're driving off, he throws a rock, busts the back window out.
No.
But he was my buddy, so we gave him a couple months off, and then we brought him back.
Forgiveness.
We
had to forgive,
a lot of
show
forgiveness.
mercy. So Married to Sister Erica, incredible woman of God. At what point were you married? Were you married as soon as you started your ministry?
So we started dating my senior year of high school, right as we're going to our senior year of high school. And then I became youth pastor a year later. And she was with us for a couple of years there. She ended up coming back here for a little while. And we got married end of 21. And so she was back over there for about 2-3 years before, I guess about 3 years before we came back. So we was married for 3 years.
As youth pastor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Married for 3.5.
So she was there for some of the...
Oh, she got to see all the fun stuff. We, our whole youth group over there was bus kids. And so picked them up on a van. I would get to church on Sunday morning, do practice, leave practice, or I'd get there early enough, set my Sunday school class up. Then we practice music. As soon as music practice was over, get in the van, go pick kids up, walk in the door right as church is about to start, run up to the keyboard, play, go back to teach class, and then as soon as church is over, bring them all back home. And Sundays were great. A long day, but those kids were awesome. Like I said, I learned so much then just from boots on the ground, being in it, because they didn't come from the same background as me. It was a different world.
And the fact that you were so young and asked to do so much, I mean, I can understand it would be overwhelming, but like you said, you're who you are today because you went through that boots on the ground experience, and then not only serving in a bunch of other different places too.
And then there was always with that, it was the experience of doing things and you're interacting with people and stuff, but then also you're learning how to navigate relationships with leaders and learning that side of it. And like I said, I'm here because of that, but there was some things I wish I'd known earlier, and I got burnt out. So 6.5 years later, burnt out. We tried to retire from youth ministry. We basically said we're done. Loved it, loved those kids, but we can't do it anymore. We left. We were actually talking about moving to Central, so we were kind of looking at some churches over there. And basically the one church we said we wouldn't come to was here because it was so close to our other church and we didn't want any kind of issues.
Yeah.
And so we were, okay, we can't come here, but we're going to move out that way. So we were visiting other churches, but like on Wednesday nights or Sunday nights, if we didn't have time to go somewhere else, we'd just go ahead and visit here since we knew everybody. And that's when we kind of felt like maybe this is where we're supposed to be. So we came back. Gentry was born in July, right as we became youth pastor. But when we came back, the original plan, we're not going to be youth pastor, not going to do that anymore. And about January, February, Brother Payne come to us and say, hey, I want you to pray about something. As soon as he started the conversation, I knew it was about. No question what it was going to be about.
How long have y'all been here when this conversation happens?
About 3-4 months.
Oh, my word.
About 3 months. And so I never got to stop going to youth rallies. I went to youth rallies as a young person, became youth pastor immediately, went to all the youth rallies, skipped like 2.
Yeah, your break was during when we don't have any youth rallies.
Yeah, and then it's like, hey, I want y'all to pray about working with the youth. And at that point, it was going to be a team of us. And a couple months later, he came back to us and said, hey, I want y'all to pray about being youth pastor. And at first, Eric's like, absolutely not. Because we got burnt out doing it. And it was a little PTSD. We didn't want to walk back into that world.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
Absolutely.
And that was the thing. Like, if we went independence, like, that was all we did. There were no hobbies. It was always something with ministry.
Yeah.
And because of the situation, we were kind of like sectioned off. We didn't have a lot of people our age. And we were kind of isolated to an extent. So it was just work all the time. Work on church stuff.
Yeah.
And it was fulfilling, but...
Young married couple.
Yes.
Still figuring that out, and also...
Yeah, so when we came here, at first we were like, man, I don't know. But then we were like, okay, we kind of felt it. We knew. And we became youth pastor, I think it was June 28th. Gentry was born a month later. Terrible time in there. Found that out after we got in there. Because the people that was helping us got married like the same week that Gentry was born. So it was like...
Bro.
It was a lot going on at that point. And so that was in 2015. And so 2015 till, was it 21?
Yeah.
21, and then we retired. For good this time.
For good this time.
Not doing youth ministry anymore.
Unless you keep wearing those white Nikes, and then I'm just going to have to
white
bring
Nikes,
you back.
I had to wear them because I was in youth. I'm like, I gotta play the part.
I literally, when I was going to preach on that Wednesday. The reason I wore the outfit was like, I have to look like a youth pastor. And then I get here and I was like, oh, it's first Wednesday. I may have should have done a little bit more.
What's so funny is that, like, the fact, I think it worked because of the fact that me and you are so different in a lot of ways to when you took over. Because I'm not the cool guy. Like, never been the cool guy. Not the athlete. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd that's actually not into a lot of nerdy things. So it's just kind of a weird thing to where, like, I didn't play video games really, but I look like somebody who would and kind of carry myself. So it's like, it's just kind of a weird thing. And then you, ball player, like, completely different.
Like, can't read. And then you're over here, can read anything. We were talking a little off, but we were talking last night when we went out with some of the youth, and I went to school with a girl who was like an actual like genius. Made a 36 on her ACT in 9th grade. Shipped off to boarding school. Has graduated from Yale and Stanford. Like big, like genius. And so we're talking to Anna last night, and I was like, Anna, you just seem so smart. She's like, oh yeah, Brother William was kind of bad for my ego because he talked about how smart I was all the time, and it made me start thinking it. And then I went to school and was like, I'm not as smart as he said I was. And I said, when I'm with Brother William, that's instantly what I think. Brother William is way smarter than I am. But you have that intellect, like you said, like your personality. You just seem like you're easy to talk to, but at the same time, like it feels like, man, this guy reads. This guy knows.
And what's funny is me, who's not an athlete, didn't play ball growing up, like formally, and I became youth pastor at Independence in the hood, like
yeah.
So it was culture shock to me, and it was culture shock to them. Like this dude walking up, knocking on my door, like what does this do? And so,
and he's huge.
Yeah, that don't help anything.
Like he's super tall. He looks down on me and invites me to church.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was. I look back at my journey, and it's interesting how God lined some things up because I needed those experiences.
Yeah.
I needed to get out of my bubble because it helped me to grow in a lot of ways. It put me through a lot, and then by the time I get here, of course, like I said, those kids were hood. Like it was so fun. But then I come over here, and a lot of them were middle class, a little stuffy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here. Oh yeah.
And they were trying to figure me out because they didn't know me, and their parents did, but they didn't know me.
Yeah.
And so it was. It's been an interesting journey, and like I said, to hand it off to you is completely different personality in a lot of ways, but it works. I think that's why it worked because we're different.
And that was kind of wild how that came together because we went to camp. We were preteen leaders. Chris and I are preteen leaders. Because I was in kids ministry for a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, it felt like a long time. It was actually just like a couple years.
That's a long time.
I loved every bit of it. And so I was like, hey, guys, I think maybe I'm missing one section of the people I'm talking to when I'm in kids. Like I'm either hitting the young ones or I'm hitting the old ones. I'm not hitting both of them. And I was like, I think there's a disconnect there. And he was like, Brother Michael was like, well, maybe we'll make a preteen class. I was like, well, I think that'd be a great idea. And he was like, yeah, you can take it. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to go, actually. I think it sounds like a great idea for somebody else.
We knew by camp that I don't think we told really anybody that we were stepping down at that point. But we knew since like probably January, February, we had a conversation that we were going to be stepping down. And so that was kind of like we were looking up to that point. And then we were just starting to kind of like, we think Nathan's a guy. So we had the conversation with Brother Payne. And we were kind of like, okay, well, he's going to camp with the junior campers, so this is a perfect opportunity. He had no idea.
No clue.
So we're like, this is perfect opportunity to find out how it goes.
Sister Chris and I, we show up. We get to go to camp. My first time ever at a youth camp. I didn't grow up in a youth group. I didn't go to youth camps. So it's my first time ever, so I don't know anything about the campgrounds. I'm like, students are teaching me like where stuff is. And I have a blast. And Sister Erica and I are at the pavilion one night. And we're talking, and I was like, I don't even know how it came up. And I was like, man, let me tell y'all what. If I ever become a youth pastor, it's going to be because the Lord said Nathan needs to be a youth pastor with Carissa because that is not for me. And there's no way that's ever going to be for me. And if that happens, I need a team of people to support me. And y'all were sitting over here knowing it at the time.
And then we went to eat at the grill.
The Mongolian
grill. Yeah,
place.
we went there. And y'all were saying this stuff, me and Eric are dying inside because we know already. well, what's in the works? And we're dying laughing because like they have no idea. He's saying, I don't know if we could ever do it. I'm like, y'all about to find out. Y'all about to find out if y'all can do it because it's coming.
But like that was when Pastor called me that day. I was like, I was at work. He's like, hey, I want you to pray about something. And I'm like clueless. And I was like, okay, yeah, what you got, Pastor? And he was like, about you and Krista taking over as youth pastors. And I was like, nah, for real? And he was like, yeah, I need you to pray about it. And I was like, oh, no. So I go home to Carissa, and Carissa's cooking. And we're in the kitchen, and her back's to me while she's cooking. And I was like, hey, Pastor called me today and wanted us to pray about something. Oh, okay, yeah, what about? And I was like, about becoming youth pastors. And, like, you hear all the pots and stuff just stop. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty heavy, ain't it? And she was like, yeah. I was like, that's what I felt. It's like, well, how do you say no? Like, you got to pray about it. But, I mean, your leader feels the direction. Obviously, you need to see what's up with it. So, man, that was a whirlwind.
Did y'all ever actually tell him yes, or did he just call you one day and say, hey, we're making the switch in a couple weeks?
He told me so. He told us to pray about it. I told Carissa. Like a week goes by. I never brought it back up. I was like, I prayed about it. You didn't ever tell me to give an answer, so I'm not. Maybe you'll move on. Like, in my mind, I was thinking, I'll help all day long. Put me on a committee, absolutely. I'll come and be the loud guy. Because that's all I was in kids. I was the loud dude. And I was just energy. And I told him, I was like, I'm not an idea guy. Like, I won't have any good ideas. You can tell me something and I can make that happen. But, like, I'm not going to have any ideas. So I was like, let me be on the team and I can execute somebody else's thing. So I was like, let's just, we prayed about it, but let's just kind of not bring it back up. And then he called me and told me, like, hey, we're going to make the transition, I believe, in October. And
the original plan was August, September, the hurricane hit.
Oh, yeah. He's like, we're going to make the transition. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, like I think the service we were supposed to announce it is when the hurricane hit.
Yeah. And then we backed it back to Family Month. Man, the only way that this will go off track, like with Sister Chris and I, is if we mess it up, because the team of support that we have, like, the way y'all left it, and then all the support, because I've been to several churches, but I haven't been in a youth group or in leadership anyway. I assume that the last 3 youth pastors aren't still at the church when the next guy comes up.
Yeah.
So our last 3 youth pastors are still here.
Last 4.
4.
Brother
Troy. Okay. So basically the legacy of youth pastors here.
The youth pastors from the last 17 or 20 years are still here.
So, like, for us to be able to walk into that and all that, not just all that wisdom and experience, but like the path back and all that leadership and everybody, it's not like they're still here, but fell away or whatever it is. Like, everybody is still a prominent member here, do stuff, serve, just have moved up. So somebody else had to come in. So to have that, and then all the support that we have, and like great parents and stuff, we needed that, because neither one of us came from a youth group, and had Sister Carissa went to a small church. They didn't have a youth group. So neither one of us have been in one. So like we needed a lot of support in order to make this thing keep going. So thankfully we have all the support from all the leaders here that were able to keep us. I can call up you, Brother Michael, Pastor, and be like, hey, here's a situation. Like, what do I need to do? Because I found out real quick, you got to reach out to somebody about it. Don't just try to dive into it. Like, there's part of this walk that you got to take on your own, but the body's there for a reason. Go back and find some wisdom from the people that came before you.
My favorite answer is, I'm glad I'm not youth pastor anymore. I did one of those recently. I'm glad I'm not the guy anymore.
I literally called Brother William and be like, hey, so this is a situation, what I need to do? And he's like, man, I'm glad I'm not youth pastor anymore. But I still need help. But man, it's been so amazing to have people, because it's like great couples too, like couples that Carissa and I look up to. And I know we're pretty close to the same age, but your ministry is, 15, 20 years. And so where I've only been really in ministry since like 2018 or 19. So it helps me out a lot that the couples that are around us are people that we look up to, respect their ministries and their marriages, so we can just go straight to them, and they're so willing to help us out. And when we came out of camp, like, that was a big thing. I need help, like at camp, going to camp, how to handle situations. And man, y'all have always been amazing for us there. Which
is a huge part of ministry in general, having people. That was one thing at Independence. We didn't try to be lone rangers. We're going to do this ourselves. We really did. We had a lot of friends we reached out to outside our church. But you have to have people. Like, there's nobody that's good enough to do it by themselves.
Yeah.
You're not going to figure out, even if you're a very creative person. If you're a creative person, lean into that. Use it. But still reach out to people. Because if you're a young person getting in ministry, like, understand you need help. When you're 16, when I was 17 and I was feeling the call, like I knew I'm about to be youth pastor somewhere. Like I was feeling that call in that direction. But I was thinking, I mean, at that time I was arrogant and I thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
Like every 16, 17 year old does. But at the same time, you do have to be confident. There was a lot of things I didn't know. Like I wasn't wrong on everything. And if you're going to step into ministry and you're going to do these things, like, you have to understand, like, God called you for a reason.
Yeah.
God gave you the gifting for a reason. And, use wisdom and always reach out to people and bounce ideas off of people. But don't be afraid to run with stuff either.
Yeah.
Because that's how things happen. That's how things change. That's how you get a youth group when there's literally no youth group. Is like, okay, well, what do I got to do to make this happen?
Right.
And trust, pray about it and trust whatever God tells you.
Yeah.
And that applies to everything in ministry.
Absolutely. I found out, so I tried to be the guy in our first year. I didn't want to put any burden on any parents or anybody else in the church. So I was like, Sister Chris and I, we'll just take care of everything, because I didn't want it to seem like they were carrying my weight.
Yeah.
And literally a year in, one of the parents come up to me and was like, Nathan, I think maybe like we need a team of people to help y'all. And I was like, well, I never want any parents to feel like we have to have y'all, like, you send us your kids for us to take them and y'all get a break. And she was like, no, a bunch of us want to help. We just need you to let us help. And I was like, boom, like I'm over here trying to take all the weight and just sit. Yeah, me and Sister Krista will take it. When we got parents out there who want to help,
right.
You got people out there who want to help. You got 20-year-olds in Hyphen that want to help with young people or have a great connection with 13 and 14-year-olds. And it's like, I was holding them back because I was trying to be the guy that carried it. It was like, okay, so in January we were like, let's flip it then. Let's flip it. And the first thing we did was get a committee for events and ideas, because that's the thing I'm short on. And her Sister Carissa works with that team for things moving forward, because like, I can put together ball. We can play ball on Sundays. But other than that, my ideas run out quick. So being able to lean on other people for ideas and advice is huge. But yeah, like running with things that, hey, you feel confident this will work, and like you said, he put you here and put those in your mind for a reason. Let's use them.
The thing, especially young people, I think need to hear is you're better at things than you think you are, and you're not as good at things as other things you think you are. Yeah. The things you think you're great at, you're probably not as good at as you think you are. But things you think you're terrible at, a lot of times you're better at it than you think you are.
Come on, yeah.
And it's just a matter of understanding my weak places. I mean, God, that's what he likes. He wants to use our weaknesses.
Right.
He gets glory when we use our weaknesses. And a lot of times when you can allow God to use your weaknesses, humility is not going to be a problem, because you understand from the very get-go this ain't me.
Right.
That it's all God.
Absolutely.
And young people need to embrace that. Like, you understand, like, what you're doing, like, God put it in you, and you're more capable than you think you are. You can reach people. You can make a difference. You can influence the kids at your church. You can influence the kids at your school, because you're better at things than you think you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially like it seems like conversation, which, I mean, I'm sure some church or some schools down here, there's a lot of people that go to church, but it's like, that is kind of like a tough conversation to just strike up. But a lot of times it won't strike up out of nowhere. Like, God creates that opportunity, and you just got to be bold enough and courageous enough to be like, there's some stuff I do know at 15, 16 years old that I can talk to somebody about, that we can move closer. And because I say all the time, you're probably not going to get somebody to come to church with you if you just walk up to them and invite them to church.
Yeah, generally.
It's going to be that relationship that you built, and that's only going to be from you talking and not, trying to take down that awkwardness.
Yeah.
But it's going to be awkward at first a little bit, but just lean into it.
And living it. Like, people are watching you, whether you realize it or not, they're watching you.
Right.
Especially, it's embracing Pentecostal kids. People are really looking at them.
Right.
They know you're the minority at your school.
Absolutely.
You stand out, and that's just a reality. They know that, I mean, if they're around you long enough and you're living it, they know the church you go to. They know that stuff. And so they're watching you because they know they can pick you out in a crowd, any of you, even the guys, because you talk different. You do things different.
Right.
You move differently than other people, and so they recognize it. More than we realize they recognize it.
And it should be. I was having this conversation with my mom a couple of days ago that, like, she had somebody at work that was struggling, feels like nobody likes her at work, feels disrespected at work, but she's close to my mom and one other lady. And I was like, well, she said something to the fact of, you're always happy all the time. And my mom was like, well, I'm not always happy. I just know that even when I'm sad or when I'm down or things are going wrong, that my Lord, the Lord that I trust in, can make it happen. And so walking around with that joy, eventually you're going to go to high school and somebody around you's having a bad day. And if they see you consistently, no matter what's going on in your life, especially those people you get close to, they know some stuff's going on in your life, but it doesn't just derail you. Now, we're all humans, have bad days, but it doesn't derail you. You still walk in the light and you walk in that example even on your bad days. People take notice quick.
And even if you never hear anything, there's a girl I went to school with, pre-K all the way up, rode the bus together most of the time. Never, I mean, we talked some. She was kind of quiet, and I invited her to church a couple times. She never came. Well, she ended up married a guy who was a backslid Pentecostal guy, and goes to church, actually my parents' church, starts going to church there. They moved across the state, but she's in church now. And one of the things she said is that, William and my sister Chrissy, they always lived it, and I saw that. And even if it was something I didn't technically get her to church, just being a Christian and living it later on down the line, they recognized it. So when they were ready to make that decision, well, I know the kids that live like this. I know the Pentecostal kids, they realized something different about those guys. And so it was easier for them to go in spite of the reputation that sometimes Pentecostal churches have.
Yeah.
That it was, but I've seen some that lived it.
Right.
And it makes a difference.
I think, and man, that goes perfect with a question that I wanted to ask you before we get off here is, so right now, somebody prophesied over you at camp or at Fourth Fest or something, and right now you're fired up, but school's coming, and like back to normal life is coming, chores at home, whatever it is, especially if you live in a home that everybody doesn't go to church.
Right.
And you got fired up at camp, you got prophesied, you got a new calling, you feel the ministry's about to start up, and then now it's back to normal life. Can you speak on like some advice on how to keep the fire and how to move towards that goal of the calling and the ministry?
So I'll be here about 30 minutes talking about this. How long do I have? Because I could really go a long time on this. Not long. Okay.
10. Let's shut it down in 10.
All right. So first thing, I'll talk to people going into ministry. You feel called to ministry. First off, my number one pet peeve about ministry, and I understand the idea behind it and the heart behind it, and it's coming from a pure place. But we have a bad habit of telling young ministers that if you stay consecrated, you stay dependent on God, you pray, and you do all those things, you'll get those opportunities one day. You'll be the camp speaker one day. 90% chance you won't be. And what I want to tell young ministers, if I could drive anything in their head, if you're feeling a call into ministry, understand the goal is not the platform. Like, your goal is not to let me preach camp, because you're going to get really frustrated in a year when you realize I'm not even getting to preach in a big church, or I'm barely getting to speak in youth.
Yeah.
Ministry is not about the pulpit. Most of it's not going to happen in the pulpit. But what it starts with, let me just do the right thing every day. Let me get a habit of reading the Word. Let me get in the habit of studying the Word. And if I don't know how to study the Word, let me ask somebody so I know how to study the Word. Let me understand that my lifestyle has to back up what I say I am. If you're feeling a call to ministry, that how you treat the other young people in youth group matters, because they're the first people going to validate you. But Nathan's probably going to give you a chance, because first off, he's not there all the time. Like, there's a lot of times young people together, and you find out later, well, this guy treats people like dirt.
Yeah.
And you wonder why the young people don't show up when it's their turn to speak. And then you find out later, oh, that's because they're a jerk behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But first off, your attitude matters. The way you present yourself matters. if you feel like you have a call, start with, all right, let me work on me. Let me not work on how I'm getting in the pulpit. Let me build a lifestyle that supports this call that I feel like I got at camp. That I feel like God called me to preach. Or I feel like God called me to teach Bible studies. Or I feel like God called me to lead worship. Well, let me do the things spiritually that I have to do to support that. Because the last thing we need is let me get the opportunity that my lifestyle doesn't back up, so that when I get up there, I fall flat on my face for everybody to see.
Yeah, right.
And not necessarily from a performance standpoint that I get up there and do a bad job, but I get up there and in 6 months I'm not in church anymore because I couldn't handle the spiritual pressure. Because I put myself in a place that I wasn't spiritually prepared for. Build the habits. Camp is great for the highs. It pushes you to the mountaintop, but you don't live on mountaintops. You don't. When you go to school, you're not on mountaintop. What happens so many times, we've seen it, you go to camp, you get fired up, you're on fire all through the summer. As soon as you go back to school, reality hits you in the face, and you realize, I'm not as spiritual as I thought I was. Because we get the spiritual high at camp, and we don't actually get the anointing to back it up. And I've learned that either comes through prayer or trials. There's going to be a certain amount of trials you go through no matter what.
Right.
And I've seen that there were times in my life that if I probably would have committed myself to just prayer and consecrating myself to God and drawing close to God, there were some trials I probably could have avoided. But God understood that you're going to have to be crushed somehow.
Yeah.
So you can crush yourself, or God's going to do that because God sees something in you.
Right.
He called you. He put something on you at camp. He put something in you at those times. And so you have to build a life that's going to back that up. You've got to learn to pray. You've got to consistently pray. You've got to consistently read your Bible. You've got to consistently do the things that we take for granted. Because I've seen plenty of preachers who didn't have a consistent daily walk with God, who were unbelievably talented speakers, who were incredibly talented, even got big opportunities, but backslid because they weren't really living it, because they didn't have that daily walk, because that's what's more important. Once again, kind of come back to ministry. I tell ministers that if you get the opportunity to preach, you think it's an honor, but it's not a reward. God doesn't reward you with big opportunities, because what do you say to the guy that's been working overseas? This missionary has been working and building churches that nobody knows their name.
Well, right.
And that comes to anything, even in the local church. God's not rewarding you by letting you sing a solo. That's an honor. Take it, embrace it. But the real work is, what am I doing every day?
Yeah.
What am I praying? Am I getting in the Word? Am I understanding what I say I believe? Because it's one thing to say you believe something, but do you actually believe it? Get in the Word, find out what it says. And that's how you build the foundation that's going to last once you go into school. Because now it's not just a hype experience when everybody's worshiping and God's just there and you could sneeze and you're going to get the Holy Ghost.
Right.
That you're actually you have something that can last in the real world when you start getting attacked. When your friends all of a sudden say there's something different about you, I don't like it. If you're just living off your camp experience, when that happens, it's going to crush you.
Right.
But if you built a foundation, you have the strength to say, you know what, I understand that, but this is who I am.
Yeah.
That you can make a stand because you've actually built something.
There's roots get
you
down in there.
Got to grow roots. You got to do the hard work. And what often happens, I've noticed over the years, is we go to camp. Two things can happen. One, the whole youth can fall apart. They can hate each other by the time they leave. That's happened before.
Everybody's tired.
Yeah, they hate each other. Or they get super close at camp, and then they come back, and they're not so close anymore. They go back into their cliques. Everybody kind of goes their own separate way. Unity is a huge part of revival, and a unity is a huge part of your personal walk with God. You can't be disunified from the rest of your youth group and think you're going to grow in God. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
you can't. You have to be attached to the body. And so part of that, when you come back from camp, is keeping each other accountable, still connecting to each other the same way you did there at camp, still praying with each other. If you prayed at camp and you just felt this incredible experience, but you come home and you don't respond to an altar call, you're not going to keep what you got.
Yeah,
you've already lost it. You've already lost sight. If you don't worship the way you did at camp, when you come back, you're going to lose real quick what you got.
Yeah.
Because, not to sound harsh, but it was a performance.
Got a week centered around Jesus, and everybody there is doing it. So, hey, I'll let down my guard because everybody else is jumping.
And then I'm sure I'm about to run out of time, so real quick make changes in your life. You go to camp, God's moving on you. God's speaking to you about things. You're detached from your normal world. A lot of your friends are at home. Everything's at home. You have this opportunity. It's just you and God. When you come home, make changes to support that.
Yeah.
Make the difficult decisions. If there's a friend that's pulling you away from God, when you get back from camp, do the hard thing. And, hey, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to be here for you if you really need me. But I've got to get right.
Yeah.
Priority in my walk with God above everything else.
Oh, yeah.
And then same thing with, if there's things in your life you're listening to, you're watching, all that stuff, you feel the conviction, you feel the Spirit, make the change. Don't try to, let me come back and see if that was real. It was God.
Yeah.
God, if you felt it then when you're in God's presence and there's no distractions, that was God.
Yeah.
Believe it. And act on these things. Make the hard decisions while you're on the mountaintop. Because you're not going to do it when you get in the valley. You're not going to do it when you get in life and you're going to school and things get really hard. You're not going to do it then. Do it while you're on fire, while everything's lighter, while everything's spiritually just more exciting. Do it then. And then it makes it a whole lot easier to keep it once things is going. Establish the habits then, the reading, the praying. Establish those habits then. Establish a habit of, let me go pray with other young people. Let me go talk to other young people. Let me go connect with other young people. Because once again, going back to your ministry, if God's calling you into public ministry, those connections you make with those young people is what's going to matter. When I was a young person, I felt called to preach. I answered when I was like 14, 15. So I was like, okay, I'm going to answer the call to preach. And I made a priority, which that was why Sister Nutter was coming and kind of establishing everything. The first impressions was really a big deal. So it was like in the front of our mind. But it was, okay, if I come to church, if I see a young person sitting down, I'm going to talk to them. Yeah. And there were several young people that were kind of on the edge, that were here because their parents made them or whatever. We were teaching Bible studies, got the Holy Ghost, baptized them. But it's just, let me be intentional about connecting with those young people.
And this is somebody who's not an extrovert.
Yeah, I'm not a people person. I am perfectly fine with locking myself in a room and not being around people. I'm good at that. I'm great at that.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference is he does that because he's a people person. No,
it was my nature. I was the most shy, awkward kid, and it was so hard for me to push myself out of that to where, I literally have a list of about 3 questions that I would go and just sit down and ask them because I didn't know what else to do after that.
Yeah.
And as soon as conversation died, I just get up and walk off. But
embrace the awkward.
It was just making a habit of building these relationships. Just got to do the things that make you uncomfortable. Ministry is going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Doing what God called you to do goes against your fleshly nature in every way possible. It's not supposed to be comfortable.
Right.
It's supposed to be, I'm not doing what I want. I'm doing what God wants.
Right.
And whatever happens, happens.
Read the word, and everybody faces it.
Yeah, reading the Bible is
uncomfortable.
Yes, it's hard to get these things established. It's hard to reach out to people. It's hard. I'm still not good at relationships. That's something I've never been good at. I don't have a lot of close friends we don't go out and eat with people.
Yeah.
We don't, and part of that's gender struggles, but we don't I've never been good at that. But I can go sit and have a conversation with somebody because I worked on it.
Right.
It was a priority because I realized if I'm going to be in ministry, I need to know the Bible, and I got to know how to talk to people. And when it becomes a priority, everything else goes out the window.
Right.
When I realized if Jesus can go to a cross and ask me to be willing to die for him, I go have a conversation.
Right.
What's conversation?
He did all that for me.
What's
I
the conversation? All the disciples died. I mean, all but one got killed for it. So it's like, I can go talk to somebody.
Right.
I can do something that makes me uncomfortable. I can worship when nobody else is. I can do small things that nobody else is doing. And if somebody laughs at me or says something about me, that's fine. I used to get called holier than thou all the time. Well, all the people that call me that aren't in church anymore. Because sometimes you got to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And you got to just go with it. Trust what God's doing.
Bro, that's so good. We can just keep going.
Just keep going.
Just keep going. But that's great. But that's the part that why I wanted to bring, because we're gonna have several other co-hosts throughout the month, or throughout the months before Brother Braxton gets back. That's why I wanted to bring in people that can speak to that. We're gonna have young people, and we've had young people on here. Speaking of work right now, I'm in this right now with you, but we also need to draw from those people that, hey, I've been through that, and I was able to set up things, or I didn't set up things, and I wish I would have. Mm-hmm. And that's what you can gain from people that are in the ministry and people that came before you and experience. We need a balance of both The young people right now, I'm not 15 right now. When I was 15, the world was a lot different. Same with you. But so we need the people that are facing the things that you're facing today. But we then also need to be able to reach back and say, hey, can you help us along the way? Because that advice and that putting up those walls when it's, like you said, when you're on the mountaintop, man, that's way easier than trying to do it when you came home and everybody's saying don't do it.
Right.
And now you're trying to build a wall and everybody else is tearing them down. Build them up on the mountaintop. Build them up now and the next month before your school starts to set some things up to where, okay, I'm going to go up in there and I'm going to lead this school, not in an arrogant way, but by an example way.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation, but humility doesn't just apply to leadership, and that's a whole other conversation. But humility in every aspect of your life, if we're going to be Christians, we got to do that. And if you're going to make it, you got to be humble enough to admit, I'm not good enough to just do this on my own.
Yeah.
Humble enough to admit I need the Bible to make right decisions.
Yeah.
Humble enough to realize I'm not going to make spiritual decisions without praying every day. Yeah. Look at everything in your life, even as a young person, through humility. Don't just think, well, that's just for leaders. That's for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm humble enough to realize I have to do this with God's help or I'm not going to make it.
Right.
I have to have other people's help or I'm not going to make it.
Absolutely.
I've got to ask questions or I'm not going to make it. I got to be humble enough I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do. Let me rely on other people, rely on the church, rely on these opportunities God gives me, and not think that I'm just going to figure it out on my own later.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
Because you're not, and it's going to be very frustrating and tough while you're trying to.
And in 6 months, you're going to look back and say, what happened? And if you're humble enough to be honest, you'll know exactly what happened. That I didn't do the things I needed to do up front and thought I was just going to make it on this residual anointing I felt at camp.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Trying to get a lot of miles out of that one tank.
Yeah.
Rather than constantly filling up. Bro, thank you so much, Brother William.
No
We're gonna end it there, land it, and thank y'all so much for tuning in. Brother William, thank you so much for being here. Can't wait. Next episode, he will be back, co-host. We'll have a special guest on. Then, until then, sign off. Thank y'all so much. Love you guys.